Welcome to the Final Girls podcast. I'm Anna Bogutska, your podcast host, and alongside our regular seasons exploring horror film history, sometimes I'm given some time to talk to some of the most exciting filmmakers working in the genre space today to talk about the films that they've got coming up. In today's bonus episode, I got one of these opportunities to sit down with Ishana Night Shyamalan, the writer and director of The Watched, a new thriller starring Dakota Fanning that is out in UK cinemas this Friday. Based on the novel by A.M. Shine and adapted by Shyamalan herself, the film follows Mina, an artist who gets stranded in an expansive, untouched forest in Western Ireland. When Mina finds shelter, she unknowingly becomes trapped alongside three strangers who are watched and stalked by mysterious creatures each night. There's a whole lot of mystery to The Watch, so I'm keeping this one very light touch. And don't worry, this interview is completely spoiler-free. With all that said, please enjoy my conversation with Ishana Night Shyamalan. I want to start our chat by asking you the same question that I ask every single guest or interviewer in my podcast, which is what is your own personal relationship with horror? And interpret that as you want to.
I love horror. I think it's a very, very powerful genre to play in. And for whatever reason, I just feel very connected to it. I think, I myself have felt like, I think we all have kind of dark emotions and a dark side to us, and I really enjoy the process of sort of connecting with that piece of myself and tuning into that kind of little scary thing inside. So it's just something I love playing with.
Do you have any personal favorites, like movies or books or TV shows or anything?
Movies wise, I love The Ring. That was kind of like one of my faves growing up. Nice. I think, modern horror, I love It Follows. I just think it's so fantastic. But yeah, even novels, like I'm very into Frankenstein and The Shining. Yeah, I love two
Frankenstein.
Of my favorite books, so.
Yeah. I mean, all of horror stems from that,
gosh,
I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you kind of first up, I was thinking about this in, your name, your family name carries such a huge amount of recognition, but also expectation in the thriller, in the suspense, in the genre space.
Yeah.
How does that, or how did that affect or influence your work, particularly moving into feature filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a level of fear in it for me of just like, what are the implications of that on the experience of this movie. But I really was interested in playing with that expectation a bit of sort of saying, okay, this is a funny thing that there's sort of, it feels like in some way it starts similar tone to my dad's work a bit, but then becomes something very different. So I was really interested in like using that and subverting your expectations through the process of watching the movie.
Totally, and I really like how you do that.
Thank you.
and kind of moving on to The Watch, can you tell me a little bit about how did you first encounter the book, A.M. Shine's book that it's based on? Yeah. Was that something that you picked up randomly and got really into? Did someone give it to you? Kind of tell me a little bit about the genesis.
Yeah, it was kind of in a period of time when I was writing original stuff, and I was very intentional about wanting to do that, about doing an original piece. And then this book was sort of brought to us via a producer who had read it. And there was, this like little magic energy about everyone that had read the book. And there was sort of a quiet kind of, whoa, okay. And then I read it without really any preparation, without knowing what it was for or what it was, and just fell completely in love with it and loved the story. And it just felt so kind of apt to things I was interested in playing with. And it just felt kind of necessary at that moment.
And tell me a little bit about the process of adaptation.
Yeah.
Kind of what elements of the book stuck out to you that you felt needed to remain on the screen versus the ones that you felt like, oh, this is where I can fill out and make my mark, bring the visual element to it?
Yeah. I think for me, it was very much about like recalling the first read of the book. I think the movie, I was interested in when I was doing the screenplay, not having like the book open next to me, but just recalling the sort of flow of how I experienced it as a reader and how that kind of felt. That to me felt like the best way to sort of translate it into a filmic world. And then yeah, it was like always kind of there as a structural base and kind of an emotional base for the story. I very much wanted it to feel similar to the book, but just be a different art form. And yeah, I was lucky to be close with A.M. Shine during the process as well, and we kind of talked about things and got inspired together, so that was wonderful.
And what was that? I'm just really curious about how you put it, kind of this emotional base note, right? It's almost like a perfume.
Yes.
Like, what is that core emotional note for you, both in the book and in the film?
It's really interesting. I think that's actually one of the pieces that I connected to most, is that he had sort of written this character of Mina who was very lonely and very disconnected. And so I like kind of immediately latched onto that and felt that there was a similarity between me and her. And then for the movie, just sort of like built that out into something that was a bit more visual for you to kind of see and cling on to. But I found that very apt, that this journey of having someone who sort of has pushed away everything and disconnected themselves felt very relevant.
And there is also, and I'm looking away for the listeners, at the background behind you, which is, this really dark, spooky forest.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about filming in Ireland.
Yeah.
Because you filmed in Dublin, Galway, County Wicklow, I think.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about using the Irish landscape, the forest in particular, to convey this sense of isolation of Mina?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm very much a filmmaker who I love to use as much real kind of locations as possible. I was always pushing for that. We did have quite a few amazing builds in the movie, but I just feel, particularly with the forest environment, that there is this kind of underlying texture and feeling that does translate onto film. It's like the energy of a space does come through. And this forest in particular, we really dug for, and we looked at so many different forests all through Wicklow County, and this was kind of the last one that we came across that my production designer had found. And kind of the second you walked in, it had this very, very eerie feeling to it, this like homogenous, dead kind of emotion to the space. It was very quiet, and I think that kind of thing of like when you walk into something and just feel, oh my God, I've never experienced anything like this, is what translates best onto camera.
And do you think kind of that eerie, oppressive feeling of the forest, plus with the fact that Mina is so isolated in her own feelings and her memories. Did you experience that the same, kind of coming into this set, into this other country with a huge amount of its own folklore and history? Did you experience that yourself on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised by how comfortable I felt there. I think it's sort of like a testament to the Irish culture and the people, where they were very warm and welcoming, and I felt like it was weird. I felt more so at home there than the place that I was actually living at the moment. But just I think the journey of an artist very much feels like that you're sort of walking the path alone and you're scared of everything and not sure what's going to come next. So it was, I think Mina's journey is very much like how I feel sort of moving through art.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And kind of, you've had these amazing experience writing and directing episodes on The Servant and working as in Second Unit, I believe, and Old and Cabin in the Woods. Knock at the Cabin, sorry.
No problem.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you learned, but what did you find still surprising about directing your first feature?
I think I learned so much through those experiences. It was very much like I came into filmmaking, even though I had gone to film school, I felt very much at a loss with like when you actually walk onto set, how do you talk to people and what do you say when you want to get a certain performance? Like those things all felt very foreign to me, and the opportunities on Servant and doing Second Unit allowed me to kind of try out different techniques and see what worked best for sort of like aiming for the things that I was aiming for. And then moving into the feature space, I definitely was afraid of the length of the process and the scope, and was just like, how will I have the endurance or the gall for this thing? And I found that it was even more crazy than I thought it was going to be, and was sort of pushed to places where I really didn't feel I could do it, and then somehow made my way through. So it was one of those experiences that I think demonstrated to me how you move through a moment where you don't know the answer. And I found that very exciting.
And you mentioned kind of how being worried about bringing out a certain performance.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about working with Dakota particularly? Because her character, Mina, really not only carries the story and the mystery of both herself and what happens in the film, but also is at times like a very prickly, borderline unlikable character.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did you work with her to draw out those nuances?
I think she is a very intuitive actress. I think she kind of got that was the intention pretty early on. And we talked kind of generally about what we were striving for, and I would sort of communicate what the intentions of the scene were, but it was very, very much felt like a process. We were sort of figuring her out together and playing with different things. I mean, Dakota is so experienced and so steeped in the film world that she just brings this kind of natural history to sort of what she does. So it was very much like me, I think, observing her and her observing me that really allowed us to kind of create Mina together.
Because she's been working for, on the screen for so long.
Yeah.
Did you find that almost helpful or a bit intimidating?
It always intimidates me. I think when I'm walking onto a set, everyone is more experienced than me and has a bigger body of work. So that leads to, I think, a great sense of insecurity, which is helpful to me, I think, in certain ways, to feel very insecure. It makes me question everything and be open to changing anything. So I try to kind of be confident with my artistic intentions and go for those and get those things, but knowing that there's so much I have to learn from everyone else, I think, is really exciting to me as well.
I heard a director in another interview say that it was also his first feature. He said that every single person on set had more experience than he did. And he deliberately picked people like that.
Yeah.
But that they were trying something new for the first time, so that everybody had that same interest in proving themselves in another way.
Yeah, that's
Was
cool.
there anything that helped you get over any sense of insecurity, something that was like your North Star in having that endurance to actually finish a film?
I mean, I think I had really wonderful collaborators around me. That everyone was such a wonderful artist, and this is it's something I think I learn every time I walk onto a set, is that we're all equally figuring it out. It's you can be the most experienced person on set, and nobody really has the answer. And so to just be able to communicate with each other, I think is the most important thing. So I've just tried to allow honesty to be the center of how I work. I wrote that down in a notebook at the beginning of the process. I was actors and your crew can sense when you're lying to them. You have to be just completely honest, even if it's not knowing the answer or being in the middle of figuring it out. I think that's kind of how everything can come together.
And I want to ask you a little bit about the sound.
Yes.
Because without going into any detail about the story and the events that transpire, the way that you create kind of atmosphere, but also the way that the forest sounds, the way that the different spaces sound, whether they're enclosed or open air.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about finding that soundscape and the right level of reveals or even creepiness that you can express through the soundscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sound was a very exciting part of the process. It was because the movie is about not being able to see the enemy. I knew from the beginning that the sound was going to be the main piece of storytelling for that kind of section where you don't know what the threat is. I worked with an incredible sound designer, Sylvain Belmar, and he's just such an artiste and was playing with so many different things. And then it was very much, I think, for us in the design process about like stripping it down as much as possible so that you're feeling every kind of crack in the woods and every gust of wind, and it's all very intentional in that way. And then we also had the luxury of this being like a bit more surrealist film. So we sort of were playing with different things that are not supposed to be there. And just like that adds to the level of suspense and oddness, I think.
I like the use of the word oddness and
yeah.
surrealism. Did you have like a pool of, obviously you had the book, the script, kind of your vision, but did you have a pool of references for those more surreal, otherworldly elements that you wanted to include, either by allusion or explicitly?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I'm very inspired by artists who just like push the boundaries in that way and go kind of experimental. So that was a really interesting piece of it, like trying to be able to have that experimental approach to the filmmaking while going for something that could be kind of universal and commercial. So I just really enjoyed that, like that we've kind of hidden things throughout the movie. There's like this one shot of Mina in the bathroom where you sort of push in over the mirror, and that's a reference to a Lahane shot where basically like we did. Yeah, did you see that? We have like a double there and her, and it's kind of imperceptible if you haven't seen that, but it's a very experimental thing that they did in that movie. So there's like little things like that throughout the film that I think was just kind of a joy for us to play with as creators and kind of contributes to the overall feeling.
I love that. And just as a final question, this might not be true, but I heard somewhere that your dad actually worked second unit on this film.
He did.
Tell me a little bit about the tables turning in that way for you. What was that like for you?
It was so fun. I mean, I was shocked that he even said yes to doing that. I was like, you're so busy. How do you have the time for this? But it was really wonderful. And yeah, like, honestly quite emotional, like that he wanted to work so hard to like achieve what I was asking him to do, and was so sort of faithful to my vision of the movie and my shot making. And it's just kind of cool to have that back and forth flow with him.
And you could tell, and you could boss your dad around as well.
No,
it's the dream for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely to meet you.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you too.